And here to break it all down is Justin Danhof. He's General Counsel for the National Center for Public Policy Research. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Carrie. It's nice to talk with you.
And Justin, I know we're not going to delve into the politics of that. We're going to get later in the show. But you are a constitutional expert. Walk us through the legality here, the time frame. So Democrats today say they're going to vote. There have been some Republicans who are going to jump on board, including Liz Cheney, the number 3 in the House Counsel Conference. And the move here by Democrats, they're trying to push this forward as quickly as they can. The move comes after last night. The vice president, Mike Pence, said he would not invoke the 25th Amendment. So the House said, OK, we're going to go ahead and we plan to bring the impeachment. The recommendation for the 25th Amendment was passed nearly along party lines. It was a 223 vote to 205 vote. And when the vice president delivered his note, he said, hey, last week I did the same thing constitutionally. I did my duties under the Constitution, and now I'm doing it again. My constitutional duties. The 25th Amendment is not to be used, he said, for a personal vendetta or personal vindictiveness. It should be used in cases of incapacity, and it was passed after JFK and after he was shot. And so the big question here is the time frame. So let's say today, this morning, the House, and we might be dipping into it later in the show, is debating. They're likely going to pass these impeachment articles. What's the time frame for the Senate? If the Senate decides to pick this up, is there a legally required timeline, or can McConnell extend this indefinitely?
Well, interestingly, first, let's just step back. Like the articles of impeachment, what precedent is this setting, right? We under one of two auspices, these are being passed. First is inciting violence, what we saw at the Capitol. We all condemn the violence at the Capitol. Any right-thinking person condemns the violence at the Capitol. But if we're talking about inciting violence, President Obama's rhetoric against the police led to 5 law enforcement officers being gunned down in Dallas. Should we go back and try and re-impeach President Obama for that? I don't think so. If we're talking about questioning election results and using social media to do so, who said the election was hijacked on Twitter? Well, that was Nancy Pelosi after the 2016 election, not the current election. So I think we're setting up a dangerous precedent if we're saying that broadly inciting violence, which I think if you listen to President Trump's speech, it's hard to discern that, or questioning election results. We can go back to 2004 with almost every Democrat in America saying that Ohio was stolen by some faulty voting machines. So I think this is a crazy precedent that the Democrats might be setting later today. That's the first point. But the second point is it's actually not up to McConnell if we're talking about what happens in next steps. If the House does vote to impeach President Trump today, then it's actually all in Pelosi's hands still. There's a technical aspect of delivering the articles of impeachment to the Senate that is up to her. So she can withhold those for an extended period of time. And over the weekend, when this was being bandied about as a possibility, Representative Clyburn suggested that she would hold them for at least the first 100 days of a Biden presidency so that he could get his agenda moving first. So it doesn't have to go forward at all from the House. It can just stay in Nancy Pelosi's desk until she decides to move on it.
Well, presumably Democrats want to get this forward as soon as they can, although can you retroactively hold a trial even after a president has left office?
They can. Yeah, absolutely. So I fully expect if the articles of impeachment are approved later today, if they're voted in favor thereof, that I expect that the Democrats do not want to muck up Mr. Biden's first 100 days. I expect they will sit on them for that length of time at a minimum.
Interesting.
It makes logical sense from that perspective if they really want to focus on their agenda rather than continuing to litigate Mr. Trump, President Trump.
Well, that's a very interesting theory. We're going to have to hold you to that to see if this indeed happens. We'll have to bring you back on that question. McConnell, according to the New York Times, is reportedly pleased, according to this report, about the impeachment, saying that he believes it will be easier to purge Trump from the GOP with the impeachment. And it sounds like legally, from what you're saying, he doesn't have to have any compressed timeline here. And he could potentially, if what you say is true, that the Democrats want to sit on this, that could give him a pass in the sense that he wouldn't have a sense of urgency to try to take it up if he feels pressure and if secretly this is what he really wants.
Yeah, I'll wait judgment on the New York Times report on what came out of McConnell's office until it's confirmed by others' sources. We'll just put it that way.
Sure, fair enough. Well, we do know that there are very big unanswered questions, to your point, on this question of rushing this through. Our founder, John Solomon, his latest piece looks at some of the very big questions about whether the president incited a spontaneous eruption of violence or if this was all premeditated, pre-planned, and whether the fact that the FBI reportedly knew that this was happening weeks in advance, and reportedly, according to John Solomon's reporting and other statements, that the president was not even briefed about these security risks, so that the White House did not know about this. So therefore, this begs the question, if the president did not even know that there were some forces here that were planning deadly riots, how could he then be accused of knowingly inciting something when he was looking, as he had said, at the legal arguments here about what happened at the ballot box? He was bringing arguments before courts. Yes, he was frustrated. Did he go too far on Twitter? That's, again, for the court of public opinion and legally lots of questions that are going to be answered. We actually have to take a quick break. Justin, I'm glad we're going to bring you back here after the quick break to talk about big tech censorship questions. This is a huge issue for all of us here at Just the News. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Real America's Voice is a platform that fosters the real voice of America.
God bless America. Thank you for being here.
It's my voice. It's your voice. It's Real America's Voice.
Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield, and glad you are here.
You're watching Real America's Voice News. Real America's Voice News brings you real news and real opinion in a real world.
Keep it right here, Real America's Voice.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay up to date with Real America's Voice News.
Hey, I'm David Brody. Glad you're with us.
Download the Real America's Voice News app today at americasvoice.app. Real America's Voice News is a platform that celebrates America every day.
I am thankful for many things, including you, our viewers who inspire me.
Don't miss 1 minute of Real America's Voice News. Real America's Voice News is opinion done right, on demand and on every platform. Tune with what's happening now on Real America's Voice.
God bless America. Thank you for being here.
There's finally a platform for your news and your voice.
Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield, and glad you are here.
Real America's Voice News is the perfect news companion, featuring breaking news and expert commentary to get you through your day. Real America's Voice News brings you real news and real opinion in a real world.
Keep it right here, Real America's Voice.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay up to date with Real America's Voice News.
Hey, I'm David Brody. Glad you're with us.
Download the Real America's Voice News app today.
I back my pillow with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, I do all my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota. I personally guarantee that my pillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own.
For a limited time, you can get a premium MyPillow for the lowest price ever. Regularly $69.98, now only $29.98. That's a $40 savings with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Good morning and welcome back here to Just the News AM. I am Carrie Sheffield. Glad you're with us. We're joined again by Justin Danhof. He's the General Counsel at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Hey there, Justin. So let's talk about this question of tech oligarchs, big tech oligarchs. This was a phrase that Rudy Giuliani just used in an interview with us here at Just the News. He says that big tech oligarchs they're exerting control that is untoward and they're a big risk to the country as well as China. So he's saying that the risks are coming here from within and from without. And the big question that a lot of conservatives and just people who are interested in freedom of speech, what they're concerned about is questions of illegal behavior by these companies. So what's your perspective on this question of collusion? Because some have argued that from just seeing how coordinated the response seemed to be against the president, against Parler, against any number of conservatives or conservative platforms, et cetera, is there a legal argument here that there was collusion of some kind?
Yeah, so I think Parler is the preeminent example in this situation. So if you want to look at, and oligarch's the right term, I would say it's an oligopoly acting as an oligarchy in this situation. So first of all, shame on conservatives and libertarians who for more than a decade have said the free market will solve this, that there's no, big tech may be censoring conservatives, but free market, yeah. Well, shame on us, any of you who said that, because look, they said just create a new platform. If you don't like the censorship occurring on Facebook and Twitter against conservatives, which has been happening for a decade, create a new platform. So Parler did. But then they disappeared Parler. They're like an unperson from George Orwell's 1984 at this point. Okay, so Apple, which operates in a monopolistic way, because if you want to download an app, it can only be done through their app store, right? Well, they went ahead and removed Parler. Then it was removed by Alphabet, Google, Android, iOS. So they're operating in cahoots to ban a platform that they just simply don't like. And they're banning them for the reason that they don't like them. And now let's parallel this to how Apple operates in China. At the behest of the Chinese Communist Party, Apple, of course, deletes many apps from its app store, largely news apps, at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. And specifically, they deleted apps that the freedom fighters in Hong Kong were using to communicate and to get information and to get news. And so how does that parallel to what's happening here in the United States? So clearly in China, Apple is operating as an extra governmental arm of the Chinese Communist Party, acting at the behest of the communists to do what they want. Well, we have folks like Nancy Pelosi and AOC and Kamala Harris in the United States calling on Twitter and Facebook and others to ban President Trump and to take down Parler. And what are they doing? They're honoring those requests. Are they formal state requests? No. But the argument could very well be made that they're acting at the behests of the leaders of the United States of America. They're an extra governmental body at this point.
Well,
so, yes.
Also, what about the fact that these companies, Google, for example, they also get large government contracts, Amazon Web Services as well. Is there an argument to be made here legally that these are basically, because they get so much government money, is this government suppression of free speech? Or is that too much of a stretch because they are technically, the corporations are privately owned, but does the fact that they get government money through government contracts give any weight to that argument?
That may be a step too far because we don't even need to go there, right? First of all, they're acting in a monopolistic way. So antitrust should ensue immediately. Second, Twitter lost something like 8% of its value after it dropped the president, which was a huge draw for Twitter. Even some talking heads on some liberal networks have noted that this might not have been a good business decision for Twitter.
Oh, and
right?
that begs the question legally then. So not only Twitter, but Facebook lost a substantial share of its value as well. Is there a legal argument from a shareholder perspective that they could sue the management for their behavior here, especially when they leave other people on the platform, people who are, for example, the Ayatollah of Iran, who has explicitly called for the destruction of Israel for very anti-Semitic behavior, Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, figures who are expressly anti-American and anti-human rights that remain on these platforms. Is there an argument from a shareholder perspective that these businesses and these CEOs are failing their fiduciary duty?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Lawsuits should abound from shareholders, right? Because boards of directors and management, their job under state law is to act as a steward for the shareholders. That is their legal obligation. They are not to act as an extra governmental arm of one party or another to banish. And for those listening who think that this is just President Trump losing his Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, it's thousands of conservatives. It's thousands of conservative organizations. And it's happening all the time. And so, yes, they're acting in an arbitrary and capricious way to appease a political class that has nothing to do with acting as a steward for their investors. So if you lose, like Twitter is probably the best example because President Trump communicated with so many folks through that medium and so many folks engaged with Twitter just for that reason. So if Twitter traffic goes down and their stock price goes down as a direct result of just a political action taken by Jack Dorsey and his lemmings, absolutely the investors should rise up and file lawsuits. They should spring eternal at this point.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned Nancy Pelosi earlier, and again, the piece that our founder John Solomon has out this morning raises the question, what did Nancy Pelosi know about this riot? Nobody here at this network condemns the violence or endorses the violence. We all condemn what happened. The Capitol siege, every single person who was violently engaged in this riot needs to be held accountable, absolutely. But the big question is, what did Nancy Pelosi know about this? If we know that the FBI has said that they knew about this weeks in advance, and Nancy Pelosi, if it's true, she did nothing about it, the Sergeant at Arms for both the House and the Senate, they declined the National Guard here. Presumably, both those entities spoke with Nancy Pelosi. Presumably, they spoke with her and notified her that this could be happening, and she chose to do nothing. And yet now, after this heinous act of violence happened on the Capitol, that she is now using this moment to pressure against freedom of speech. I mean, these are big unanswered questions that we have to get to. I do want to point out that Gab.com has resurrected President Trump's, at least the archives of President Trump's Twitter, and you can go to Gab.com and you can see the archives there of his old tweets. So this is from Twitter, and they've reproduced it in full from the archives. Do you think Gab.com, do you think they have any copyright issues, though? Could they face copyright threats from Twitter?
Sure. It's and we'll see how long it lasts, right? The tech monopolistic nature has waited for their moment to erase anything that they disagree with. And by the way, they disagree with anything that's right of center. Okay. And they do it uniformly. Amazon through their web services, it's just wild the amount of control they have. So if you're a right of center, prepare to be erased. That's what you can tell them.
All right, Justin Danhof, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks, Gary.